everyone. I'm Cathilea Robinett, President and CEO of eRepublic, the parent company of Governing Magazine. We are starting a new series where we're featuring the 2025 Governing Public Officials of the Year. For over 25 years, we have been selecting and celebrating those individuals who are truly making government better. We hope that you enjoy these conversations. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Michael Adams, the Secretary of State of Kentucky. So Michael, first of all, congratulations on your award.
Too kind. You can't see it, but it's sitting next to the laptop that I'm using to do this. It's sitting right on my desk. It's the first thing someone sees when they come in my office. I'm really proud of it.
Oh, well, that's great. And as you should be. You know, it's so fun to be part of that team that selects these public officials. And, you have accomplished so much in your career. But before we get to that, I really, was intrigued by your story. You entered politics in some way when you were very young. First of all, what motivated you to do that as a young kid?
Sometimes I ask myself the same question. What was I thinking? I came from a totally apolitical family, normal people who didn't like politics. They would vote sometimes, but really were not connected to it. And it's, some people just have a recessive gene and they discover it often at a young age. I worked in politics professionally, and I knew a lot of people who were like me, who were teenagers and were running campaigns professionally before they were old enough to vote. And I was one of those people. So for whatever reason, honestly, I think what it was is when I was about 11 years old, the Iran Contra hearings were on TV. And I grew up in a very restrictive household, and my TV habits were not very lax. And so I couldn't watch a lot of what I wanted to watch. So I watched a lot of C-SPAN. And I just fell in love with it and watched House proceedings and Senate proceedings. And so I just fell in love with politics.
Thank you. Yeah, that is so interesting. And then college. So talk to me a little bit about that, because being involved in election law, like how did that happen and how did you become interested in that?
So it's interesting when I went to law school at Harvard 25 years ago, and I wanted to do my thesis on election law, and there was no one, the biggest law school in America, and the most prestigious, there was no faculty advisor on election law. There was no course. There was no nothing. I had to go to the Kennedy School to find someone to help me with my paper. I thought that was kind of crazy. I thought it made a lot of sense for people who like politics and know politics to do that through the legal profession. And we didn't really have an election law bar 25 years ago in America. And Bush v. Gore started to change that. It made the issue prominent and somewhat sexy and appealing. And that's what I wanted to do with my living. And I did for most of my career. But really, the second step was Citizens United that came down in 2010. It really opened up a lot of avenues and a lot of need for legal professionals in election law. And so, what I dreamed of doing really is still not fully utilized as a profession. Most people who do election law, 99% of them are people who do normal law, and then they might dabble in election law here or there. I was fortunate to be one of the first people to actually piece together a national practice for all 50 states and 5 territories. And it started in college. Just I fell in love with politics. I did student government. I did local campaigns, and I fell in love with it, and I've still got that love.
I love that. That is unique. So you managed to successfully update election laws in your state. Obviously, now I can see why and the passion that you bring to that. But you really brought Democrats and Republicans together to support a bill that incorporated the concerns of both sides. Can you talk about the challenges and experience of that process? And what was fruitful about it? What did you learn from that?
Well, Kentucky, I'm really proud to say, not only are we the only state in the last 6 years that's made bipartisan election reform a reality. We've not just done it once; we do it every year. Every year I've been in office, I'm in my sixth of 8 years. Every year we've gone to the legislature with a bold plan that makes it easier to vote, but also harder to cheat. And we pick up these and we pick up ours. We have everyone from Rand Paul to our Democratic governor supporting these measures and all the Democratic caucus in each chamber. And we do that every year. And that's a normal thing. Elections that's kind of a third rail issue. There's a blue version of what elections should look like and a red version. And to me, that's silly. Most of the things that we do, like knowing who our voters are, making sure our records are accurate, expanding voting opportunities, those are not ideological things. Those are just good customer service. And so we really try to work with both sides and be seen working with both sides so that the entire election system will be trusted by the general public.
Right. Also during the pandemic, I mean, you were presented with many challenges, all of us were, but you worked to expand voting access and participation during that time. Can you speak to the responsibility of running elections and why that's something that you felt drawn to do?
Well, my first big job was in college. I was the election administrator for my college, and it was a big school, 25,000 students, and I had to run the student government elections for all the different campuses and the nursing school and the law school and so forth. And that was a good experience to learn from. It didn't prepare me for running elections in COVID. I had kind of bad luck. I ran and I got sworn in, and then boom, COVID hit 2 months later. So I've never had a normal election. I've had the pandemic. I've had conspiracy theories and all of this. So I've never had a normal election. But it's been a great experience, and unfortunately, Kentucky tends to be somewhat slow to progress sometimes and resist modernity a lot. But crisis led to opportunity, and the fact that we had to completely redesign our election process to safely vote in a pandemic gave me a lot of freedom to frankly experiment and try new things like vote centers where someone can vote who doesn't live in that particular precinct. They'll still vote in their precinct as a matter of law, but instead of having a bunch of little tiny places that are hard to get to and don't have running water or good roads to get to them, why not have a big facility that people, it's centrally located where everyone can just come and vote, and it's more convenient. It's on a commuter path. We had designed our election process in 1891, and it had never really been revamped. And the whole reason you have a legislature with annual sessions is the presumption that we can do better. We should come back every year and make education better, housing better, elections better too. One thing that was different about me is my predecessors never ran on election policy. And with my election law background, I was the first to run on elections being my lead policy area I wanted to tackle. And I was fortunate to win, and I've been very fortunate that I've fortunately gotten people to listen to me and make changes that were necessary.
Let me just dig into that a little bit. So, I read that the election law hadn't been updated. I mean, it was very, very old. So, did you kind of run when you ran? Did you run with this idea that you were going to upgrade the entire system for Kentucky?
Well, I had a big vision and a big dream, but it was totally unrealistic. And it would have been if it had not been for for COVID and
COVID.
for the ability to use emergency powers to redefine things, redo things in a different way. And fortunately, the voters liked them. Voters of both parties. We had a very competitive primary for the U.S. Senate on the Democratic side in 2020. We had huge Democratic turnout, and they liked what we did. And then in the November election, we had a huge turnout for the Republican candidates, and the Republicans liked it too. Urban folks, rural folks, everybody liked it. And then when we came back to the General Assembly the next spring, we said, hey, we have a great idea. Why don't y'all just ratify everything we did and keep it, make it permanent? And for most of what we did, they kept it. But I'll confess something. Sometimes you run on something and then facts intervene. When I ran in 2020 or in 2019, I had an underdog campaign against a very well-liked Democrat, and I defeated her in part by making the election a referendum on expanding mail-in voting, which I opposed. And then I beat her with that issue. And then immediately COVID hits, and I have to recant everything I said and say, no, 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 no. We need to vote by mail this time. That was a bit uncomfortable. And polling that we did showed that I was basically going to lose my head when I ran for reelection. But to their great credit, the Kentucky voters of both sides listened to me. I made a passionate case for why they could trust how we were doing it, why it was safer, why we would have fewer fatalities and other advantages to voting that way for that brief duration. And fortunately, even Republicans voted by mail that year. And we were the only state that was the case. Most states were resisting it, and in Kentucky, our voters loved it.
It's so impressive. I am just completely impressed by what you've been able to do. And, one last thing here. If you look like you're still having a lot of fun and have a lot of great ideas ahead of you. What do you think the new normal looks like for elections, folks like you?
My hope, I don't know if it's my expectation yet, but I think it is. My hope is that people will see, of both parties, see Democrats and Republicans who take the job the way that I take it
Mhm.
and reward them and not beat them in primaries with far left or far right people who are not reasonable and rational in how to run an election. I got, fortunately, a lot of attention when I ran for reelection a couple of years ago because I had a serious primary challenge and I beat it back. And it wasn't just me, Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, same thing. Those of us who are more center right and less conspiratorial in our mindset and believe that we're in the customer service business and we want to help people vote, uh, we need to win. And if we, not just me, all of us, because
Yes.
if we get beat, if we have Democrats who get beat because they don't move their whole voting system to mail, or if we have Republicans who get beat because they don't go in for kooky theories about vote fraud, that's bad for our country. We need to have professional people of both sides running these elections in every state. And my hope, and this is a maybe less realistic hope, but it is a hope, is that people will see how we approach this job and they'll want those personality traits in other jobs. And maybe we'll have fewer people in Congress and fewer people running for president and governor who just want to yell at the other side and oversimplify things and make it a tribal battle over power and make it just about the public and doing things that make sense.
Yes, and that is why you are a 2025 Governing Public Official of the Year, that attitude.
Thank you.
So as I wrap up here, I always want the chance for you to be able to share any advice you have, not only with other secretaries of state, but other officials around the country, just in terms of your vision, the things that you've learned and the successes you've had.
The biggest lesson I've learned, and it was hard to learn after many years of working for other people in politics, I was a little cynical. And you wouldn't think serving in an office like this at a time like this would make you less cynical, but it really has. I'm way more of an optimist than I used to be because I've been in a situation where I had a tough situation to have to persuade people to rethink everything that they had learned in voting behavior, how things are supposed to work at a time when we had all these conspiracy theories and people didn't trust institutions, don't trust government ever, don't trust politicians. For me to say, actually, we need to do it this way, and you're going to like it better, and you just got to trust me. And if you don't, it's not going to work. And if you want to punish me, wait until I run for reelection and throw me out. But for now, just trust me and please try what we're trying. It works. It's pretty remarkable, all the voices out there, all the influencers and everything else. If you go out there as a government official, make your case for why the facts support you, people will actually listen in a way that will shock you. The mouthiest, most difficult people, if you just listen to them calmly and make your case on whatever it is, with facts and with respect, they will listen, and they won't just stop opposing you, and they won't just stop calling their member of the legislature to be against you. They'll actually do what you're asking them to do. It wasn't just that we got the rules changed to improve the elections. We also got the public to accept those rules and to take advantage of the offerings that we were giving them with more voting methods that just made more sense. If you don't get the public behind what you're doing, there's no point in changing the law. You have to have the public, but they will listen, even at this polarized time where no one trusts institutions and no one trusts the government. If you're just earnest and go out and make your case with facts, people will listen and you'll persuade them.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I love that. It's very promising.
Hmm.
So again, congratulations. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
me today and taking time with us. We really want to profile all the great work that you've done and, keep up the good work. And I hope to come visit you in Kentucky.
You're welcome anytime. Glad to have
Thank
you.
you.